So, my name is Charnel, and I'm a representative of FSU's Women Wednesdays to talk about your experience as a chef. So, I just kind of want to know what are some obstacles that you've had to overcome to get to your position as a chef?
I took a very non-traditional route to chefdom where I didn't go to culinary school. I say that I came from the Culinary Institute of my parents and grandparents because they kind of taught me everything I know. Growing up, everything that we cooked in our house was made from scratch. There was hardly anything coming out of a box. So I feel like I learned a lot of my skill set from that route. And so that's made it a little difficult to feel like I have credibility in the food industry and, for people to think that my skill set is the equivalent of a chef. That's been challenging. But I think the thing that probably set the tone for me was my time on the television show MasterChef with Gordon Ramsay. I mean, it really was kind of like culinary boot camp.
Mhm.
And so that I think definitely gave me some credibility and has put me in a position to really do the same things chefs do. I plan menus, shop for menus, I execute menus. I have a kitchen assistant that works with me. And so I kind of manage them and their responsibilities in the kitchen with me. Um, but on the same token, so MasterChef was great for my career and, for my entry into the culinary world. But on the same token, it's also kind of been a challenge because on the show, you see that a lot of my cooking roots are Southern, especially being a Black woman.
Mhm.
That's kind of the expectation that they're Southern. And so at times that can be a bit of a challenge because people don't think that I'm capable of anything outside of Southern food. And so being that I'm from Tennessee, I grew up in the Midwest, and the cuisine in the South and the Midwest, while they are similar, they do have their differences. And so I have worked really hard to learn and understand what people who are around me in my area, in my community, what kind of food they appreciate. Um, and Indiana has not been super known for being great in the food world.
Mhm.
Um, Another challenge would be growing up, my exposure was a lot of chain restaurants. But now, being in a community of food creatives and food entrepreneurs and chefs and people just all across the whole food space has really put Indiana on the map for being good with outside of the box cuisine and fresh and delicious food, as well as that Indiana is more than just meat and potatoes.
Okay. I will like to add congratulations on your shrimp and grits and it being Gordon Ramsay's best shrimp and grits he's ever
Uh,
had.
I still have the hardest time believing that he said that. And a really funny story. There was a PA. Was he a PA? I don't remember what his role was, but at
Mhm.
the end of the day, we were all getting back to our rooms, and he's like, "Hey, Tanorria, come here." And I was like, "Oh boy, am I in trouble?" And he's like, "I just want you to know that Gordon went down and actually finished your plate of food after filming." And I was like, "Oh, okay, so he really didn't mean that. That wasn't just for
Mhm.
TV." So that was pretty cool.
That's
That was
amazing. Congratulations. Oh my goodness.
thanks.
So I know you talked about your obstacles, but and you talked about how you kind of grew up with you not kind of you did grow up with it, but what made you become interested in cooking professionally?
Oh yeah. Um well, I say I come from the institute of my parents and grandparents,
Mhm.
and I say that one because everyone cooked from scratch in my house. My dad is a good cook, my mom's a great cook, my grandmother was just like I aspired to cook half as good as she did.
Mhm.
Um but really seeing how my family always had food as the center for us. Like my family was always the people who were making meals when people had just been hospitalized or just had a baby or they were grieving or anytime there was a celebration, whether it be when we would visit family in Tennessee or we were hosting people here in Indiana, my family was always the one doing the primary cooking. And while there were times that I was like, aren't they exhausted from that? I also recognized how that is how they built community. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, that's how people make friends. Okay. And so when I finally got my own place, I lived with my parents while I was in college. And after graduating and getting my own place, that was how I got my friends to come to my apartment. Was Friday nights, we would make margaritas and I would make some kind of dish to go with it and we would hang out. And it really was my friends who were like, you need to make this like a business. And I'm like,
Mhm.
no, that's not a real job. I was like super hardcore into my corporate career at the time. And I just started recognizing that I was like, okay, when I die, when I retire, what do
Oh
I
my
want my
goodness.
legacy to be? I don't want it to be that I worked at a bank forever. And so I really started to pursue like, what's the thing that makes me happy? And it's being in the kitchen. Being in the kitchen is like, I always know how to recover when I fail.
Mhm.
I always feel just like really good, like I dance in the kitchen.
Mhm.
And so that's when I was like, okay, I could potentially make a career out of this. So that's really when um kind of the light bulb came on and I decided it was worth pursuing.
Interesting. You've mentioned that you dance in the kitchen. Do you listen to music? And if
Oh,
so, what kind of music?
oh yeah, my kitchen is always filled with Beyonce, um,
Okay.
Tobe Inigwe, or the soundtrack of Hamilton.
I love Hamilton.
Yeah, that's usually what's blaring. I mean, 80s, 90s, R&B, hip hop, a little
Mhm.
bit of pop. Sometimes, Kelly Clarkson will dance in the kitchen with me too. But for the most part, my go-to is Beyonce because anytime I listen to Beyonce, I always want to dance. And so it
Mhm.
keeps my energy up in the kitchen.
Oh, I love that for you. What is your favorite and least favorite part of your job?
Ooh. My favorite part of my job is when I recognize that I helped someone, whether that means that I took a load off for them. Like
Mhm.
when I do a dinner party and people approach me and they're like, oh my gosh, I got to like engage with my guests tonight. I got to sit down and have a glass of wine and talk to people because they weren't running around trying to figure out the food and keep the snacks refilled and things like that. That is super rewarding. Or when I'm doing a cooking demo, whether it's a demo for a business or it's like a private demo or my public online classes, um doing those things and people learn something, like when they put in the Zoom comments like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you could juice a lemon upside down to catch the seeds, or
Oh.
um like, wow, I was always afraid to make biscuits, but doing it now I realize it's actually really easy. Like the my heart explodes when someone attends one of my virtual classes and then they post it on their stories and Instagram and tag me and they're like, look what I made, and I'm like, yes, that's it. So yeah, that is definitely the best part of my job, is knowing that I helped someone or taught someone something. Even on the anti-racism side, like the consultation work that I do, when I see the light bulbs come on for people and they're like, oh, I get it, I'm like, yes, like my job is done. um, I would say the hardest part of my job is, that's not the hardest part. I actually like saying no sometimes. Um, oh gosh, what is the hardest part of my job? All the administrative stuff. When it
Uh,
comes to running your own business, any business, whether it's in the food space, the consultation space, any business, there's a lot of administrative stuff that's required. I'm even going through the process now. I have a creative director, but I'm going through the process of hiring an administrative person, an admin assistant. And it's like, I recognize that they are going to take so much off my plate, but in order for them to be able to do that stuff, there's still going to be stuff required of me. Like as an entrepreneur, you never get to fully like walk away and say, nope, you've got it. Like, sure,
mhm.
I can go on vacation and, sure, if I get sick or something, I know that the people can help with moving parts, but people can't cook like me. So I can
Mhm.
never just walk away and say, okay, I can't do this dinner party, you do it. Like that's just not possible. And that makes my job difficult because I'm always on, I'm always doing.
Right. Well, okay, so kind of continuing on to that difficult part, how has COVID impacted your work?
Mm. COVID has actually been great for my business. It feels really
Oh,
weird saying that.
that's good to
Uh,
hear.
yeah. So with COVID, I remember my first thing I had to cancel was a dinner party in mid-March. And so one of the primary revenues for my business is to go into people's homes and create a restaurant experience. I'm very firm that I don't cater, but I do dinner parties, and that is more of like an intimate setting than, a big catered affair. And so I couldn't go into people's homes anymore. One,
Mhm.
I wasn't comfortable with it, and two, they weren't comfortable with it. But I had already started a private membership cooking group online,
Mhm.
and I kind of took in that private membership cooking group. Actually, I'm glad it was a pilot because it didn't go as well as I'd hoped,
Mhm.
but I learned a lot from it in that I was able to transition. Sure, I can't be in your home cooking for you, but I can be in your home cooking with you. And that kind of turned into the virtual cooking demos. And so I have had really, really cool opportunities that I'd never considered prior to COVID, where lots of companies and groups of people were trying to break up the Zoom monotony because everyone went full force with Zoom with COVID.
Mhm.
And so I started offering online cooking classes and virtual cooking demos. And so I've had the honor of cooking for companies like Walgreens and Salesforce and FormStack and networking groups that included executives from Lionsgate and Disney and Google and Apple. And so that's really cool because had I not been able to make that transition, I would have missed out on those really cool opportunities. And I'm not sure my business would have made it, but
Right.
those opportunities actually grew my business and gave me a different level of exposure that I didn't even know was possible. Um, and then during the height of the pandemic, we also had this massive civil unrest that was going on, and I had already kind of put myself out there as a resource as an anti-racism consultant and
Mhm.
diversity, equity, and inclusion. But that I think having that civil unrest occur during COVID, if it had occurred outside of COVID, it probably wouldn't have been as amplified as it was. But
Mhm.
having it happen during COVID really made me a resource for people and has allowed me to grow that side of my business, which was really in its infancy stages. And now it's grown and developed. And so I've been able to do some consultations for some really cool companies.
That's amazing. I'm glad that, COVID has made your business better instead of, where most people are at.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, it proved to me why I didn't want a restaurant in the first place. I've never aspired to have a restaurant. Like I know that I am a food creative entrepreneur and I know that
Mhm.
there are a ton of opportunities in the food space. In a restaurant, like I think it's just natural to assume that when you say you cook or you're really good at cooking, people are like, when are you going to open a restaurant? And my
Mhm.
response has always been never. I don't want one. And COVID really proved that the right frame of mind.
That's amazing. So what sort of leadership skills have you used in the kitchen setting that have helped you grow professionally as a chef?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to leadership, the ability to delegate is really, really important. That's really
Mhm.
hard for people, especially people like me who wants control of everything. But
Me too, me too.
um, yeah, it's a gift and a curse. It really is. But being able to delegate, I have a kitchen assistant that comes with me to my dinner parties, and like we have developed this kind of relationship where she dances around my dance in the kitchen and she anticipates my needs. And I think that if I wasn't able to delegate and really build a relationship with her, that wouldn't be as successful as it is. um Also, I think just being honest and vulnerable A lot of times leaders don't want to wear their heart on their sleeve, or don't want people to really see any areas of weakness. And I think that that has helped me build good, solid relationships with people that I work with, the way the public sees me. I love the fact that, you know, I have some of the greatest friends ever that I met on social media, and we've still never met face to face, but we have this really good rapport. And I think that's because they were able to identify. I always say it's a matter of know, like, and trust. You're going to have a successful business when people know you, they like you, and they trust you. And you can really accomplish that by people going, yeah, girl. When they see me on Instagram, they go, yeah, girl. It's like that, they connect, they relate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as a leader, people feel like that's not okay. Like, you shouldn't do that. But I'm the complete opposite, and I do it, and it works for me.
Yeah, and I think that definitely makes people more human too. So
Yeah,
I agree
absolutely.
with you on that. Has your gender ever made it difficult to advance in your career?
Absolutely. It blows my mind that the food industry is so male dominated, but there's this
Hmm.
expectation that women are the ones that are supposed to be in the kitchen.
Oh
They're
yeah.
supposed to be the homemaker. And so, yeah, that has made it difficult. Being a woman, being a Black woman,
Hmm.
all of those have played various parts into making my job difficult. There have been some pretty awesome men in the food space that have kind of come alongside me, and we've had some great conversations, even some mentorship.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, I honestly think that it is other women in the food space that have been the drivers to my success, because I don't think that men fully respect women in the kitchen, fully
Hmm.
appreciate their contributions. I'm like, you realize that half of your skill set came from your grandmother or your
Right.
mom, a woman. Like, that's where you learn to cook a lot of the times. But belonging to different networking groups, like Indie Women in Food is a local group here of women in the food space all across the board: bakers, food photographers, food writers, restaurant owners, food service equipment, just all the different things that are involved with having a successful food business. And being a part of that group, I am a moderator, and I'm their community, one of their community engagement leads. And just having that opportunity, that's where I think I have grown, is by being connected to those women, networking with those women, being in relationship with those women. Also with EAT, it's called Equity at the Table, and it's
Hmm.
basically all women, women of color and women in the LGBTQ community. Um, we get highlighted. So Black women get highlighted in that group instead
Hmm.
of, you know, men who, that's what they're known for, is getting all the accolades.
Right, right, right.
So yeah, it's definitely been difficult, but I think the ways that I've overcome that has really been through community with women.
Okay. I know you touched upon it a little bit, and you mentioned that, you know, you're living in the Midwest and you are a Black woman. So have there been any specific obstacles that you faced as a Black chef? Or is
Yeah.
it does it fall kind of like under the same umbrella as the whole woman?
No, it definitely, there's been some racial stuff involved. For example, there is a very affluent area that I once lived in, but also that's where a large group of my clientele comes from for dinner
Hmm.
party. And my kitchen assistant is a white woman. And oftentimes not recognizing that I'm Tanoria's table,
Hmm.
that these recipes, these cooking, this leadership comes from me. If they don't know who I am, like maybe I was a referral from a friend and they never really looked me up, they will address my kitchen assistant instead of
Hmm.
me. They'll ask her questions, and I'm like, she's awesome, don't get me wrong, but I'm the person you're writing the check to tonight.
Hmm.
So that's definitely happened. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, but girl, you are. Powerful, you know.
Thank
I'll never
you.
forget that. So maybe to like lighten the mood a little bit, what advice do you have for young women that want to pursue leadership positions in general?
Ooh, yeah. I would say know your worth from the very beginning. Oftentimes, especially in the entrepreneurial world, but this can apply to people in corporate as well. Don't be afraid to negotiate your
Hmm.
salary, your benefits. Don't be afraid to ask for that leadership position. If you can prove that you deserve the job, don't let imposter syndrome or comparison stop you from at least shooting your shot. You may not get it, but you should at least make the attempt to shoot your shot, because if you shoot your shot and you get it, awesome. Then you need to go bust your ass to prove that you deserved it.
Hmm.
But also, if you shoot your shot and you don't get it, at least there's an opportunity to learn something.
Right.
And so, um, I think knowing your worth and being confident to shoot your shot is huge for women in leadership. I also think that women need to recognize that they deserve to want those leadership positions. They deserve the benefits of those leadership positions. A lot of times, women will reduce themselves to just being helpful or saying, "Yeah, I'll take it," but and that but is usually them taking away an advantage or
Hmm.
lessening their lessening their value or their right to having something. And it's like, no, you deserve it, just like the white guy named Greg deserves it.
Hmm.
You deserve it too. And so
Hmm.
I think we are in a this movement of women of color, um just badass women who are like, go shoot your shot and get yours. And so I think that women in leadership, especially, as long as you can prove that you are doing good work, then don't be afraid to speak your truth, know your value, shoot your shot, and revel in the rewards and the benefits that you fought so hard for.
That was very inspirational. I will definitely take away the shooting my shot
Yeah,
aspect of
girl.
that. All right. So these are now some like fun little questions. They're only like two, but what are some basic cooking skills you think everybody should have?
Ooh, yeah. So I think everyone should own a cast iron skillet because it is going
Okay.
to last you for. And I think don't be afraid to cook with a cast iron skillet. Don't be afraid to experiment with a cast iron skillet. But yeah, being able to cook with a cast iron skillet, owning a cast iron skillet, taking care of a cast iron skillet, I think that is incredibly important. Um, I think that everyone should know how to season their food. People are terrified of seasoning, and I think that comes a lot from heart health and making sure things are not salty, but knowing the right salt to use. Kosher salt should be your everyday table salt. If you can get diamond crystal kosher salt, then you're gonna really be proud of yourself. Also, not to be afraid of seasoning. Experiment with seasoning, research what different things go with, because so many different herbs and spices have health benefits, and people are so terrified of using them that they're missing out on those health benefits. So I think the most basic cooking skill that everyone should know is how to create well seasoned food.
Wow. I will keep note of that too. And then for the last question, which kitchen utensils do you recommend?
Oh yeah, a cast iron skillet, of course, is top of my list. I think a good quality knife. If you feel like it's a splurge on it, because it should last you for a really long time if you take care of it, keep it clean, keep it sharpened. So I think a good quality knife, um, um, a good solid wood cutting board, wood or bamboo. Don't buy a glass board. That's what my grandma owned. Don't buy a glass cutting board. So I feel like people can really create really delicious food with a good knife, a solid cutting board, a cast iron skillet, and either a wooden spoon or a rubber spatula. Like, those are the basic things you need to pull off cooking fundamentals. Um, And then a fun one to have would be a microplane zester, because I just love like citrus zest because it just brightens up dishes. So I
Mhm.
really love that. And also invest in a good food processor because it is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of extra work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chef Tenori. I really appreciate you taking your time to have this interview with me.
Of course.
I definitely learned a lot, and I will keep mental note of all those things that you said. I will remember that I'm a badass as well, you know?
Yes, you are.
All right, I'll stop